Uh, Good afternoon to all. In the last lecture, we were dealing with the important terms and concepts of infectious disease epidemiology and with respect to the dynamics of transmission, various aspects related with the cases, with the case, reservoir, and carriers. We have seen different type of carriers. So continuing with the same, now we will deal with the modes of transmission, the various aspects related with the host, the disease prevention and treatment. So mode of transmission. Now mode of transmission can be direct or indirect. We will see various aspects of the direct and indirect separately. Just to enumerate, direct can be through direct contact, through droplet infection, through contact with the soil, through inoculation via skin and mucosa. We will see different examples of this, transplacental or vertical. Indirect means some agent is involved between the source, between the agent and the host. Can be vehicle borne, can be vector borne, can be airborne, fomites, and unclean hands and fingers through. Now, direct contact. This implies an immediate transfer of infectious agent from reservoir or source to the susceptible host. Examples being leprosy through touch, scabies, kissing, infectious mononucleosis, kissing is involved, and in HIV and syphilis and various STIs, sexual intercourse is involved through direct contact. The infection may be transmitted from skin to skin, skin to mucosa, mucosa to mucosa of the same or another person. Direct contact ensures reduced time required for the infectious agent to survive in the external environment. That's why a large infective dose is required, and if a sufficient infective dose is given, the infection is generally very severe. Now, through droplet infection, example being the current pandemic, direct projection of the droplets or saliva, nasopharyngeal secretions during coughing, talking, singing, sneezing, spitting, talking to the surrounding atmosphere, and they impinge largely over conjunctiva, respiratory mucosa or skin of close contacts, and these droplets, which contains millions of organisms, are inhaled by the surrounding susceptible hosts and acquire infection. The examples being coronavirus disease, diphtheria, measles, TB, whooping cough, etc. Direct transmission to soil can also happen when infectious agent is in the soil and through direct exposure to the susceptible host. The organisms gradually penetrate the skin and infection is acquired. Examples being hookworm infection, hookworm infestation, tetanus, mycosis. Direct transmission can also happen through inoculation indirectly into skin and mucosa. Example being rabies, the organism in the saliva of the dog are directly inoculated into the skin and mucosa. Our examples are Hep B and HIV. Transplacental vertical transmission from mother to fetus. Examples being toxoplasmosis, rubella, cytomegalovirus, herpes simplex, varicella. The transplacental vertical transmission can also happen of non-living things like alcohol, thalidomide, various drugs, and this can occur through placenta or during labor. Coming to the indirect transmission, transfer of infectious agent from source or reservoir to susceptible host by the agency of other factors, for example flies, fingers, fomites, food, fluid, commonly known as F's through which indirect transmission happens. The essential requirement for indirect transmission is the capability to survive in the external environment and retain pathogenicity and virulence. That is the utmost importance, because if the as we know that that's why the agent, host, and environment, these these triad and three factors, they interact, and after interaction only the disease occurrence takes place. And indirect transmission depends on the characteristic of the agent, the inanimate object, environmental factors, and resistance to the drugs being another factor. The indirect transmission can happen through a vehicle. The infections are known as vehicle-borne infections. So vehicle-borne disease transmission implies transmission of infectious agents through the agency of water, waterborne diseases, foodborne diseases, blood and serum. They have a separate group. Most common vehicle being water. Dead, decaying matter with fecal pieces in soil mixes with the rainwater. The infectious agent, for example, the infectious agent reaches river and water resources. Agent continues to multiply in water reaching susceptible host. So, example, man is the commonest contributor to the water pollution. The examples of waterborne diseases being diarrheal diseases, cholera, hepatitis A, E, bacillary dysentery, polio, typhoid. These are important and common examples of waterborne diseases. Foodborne, similarly, foodborne diseases includes food poisoning, intestinal parasites, most common and shortest incubation, one of the shortest incubation period infection being staphylococci through external contamination, salmonellosis when there is pre-existing poison, intestinal parasites, example being Ascaris. The salient features, epidemiological features of vehicle-borne diseases are: if the dose of contamination is heavy, outbreak may be explosive. For example, in cases of food poisoning or any other large outbreak of waterborne diseases mentioned just before. Cases are confined to those who are exposed to the contaminated vehicle in some infections. These are important factor. It need not to be widespread. And if the source is identified, that the infection can be gradually stopped. And when secondary cases occur, primary cases are obscured. The distance traveled by the infectious agent may be very large in waterborne diseases, food poisoning, and it is not always possible to isolate the infectious agent in the incriminated vehicle. And when the vehicle is controlled or withdrawn, the epidemic usually subsides. This is the one of the important epidemiological feature related to the control of the vehicle-borne disease. And common source of infection is often traceable. Example being cholera. John Snow, who he detected. Vector-borne, another component of indirect transmission is vector-borne. Means vector is defined as an arthropod or any living carrier that transports the infectious agent to the susceptible individual. And further, since vector-borne diseases are large, they are further classified whether they are transmitted by vertebrate or invertebrate. When the vector is a vertebrate, what can be examples being mice, rodents, bats, and invertebrate, mainly insects, arthropods, flies, fleas, cockroaches, suckling lice, bugs, ticks, cyclops. These are examples of invertebrate or arthropod vectors. By transmission chain, if we see the classification of vector-borne diseases by transmission chain, transmission can happen between man and non-vertebrate host, For example, malaria, man, arthropod man, or can be through snail, snail man in cases of schistosomiasis. Transmission, if the transmission chain involves man to another vertebrate and then non-vertebrate, the example being mammal, arthropod man, example being plague, bird, arthropod man, encephalitis. These are examples of the vector-borne diseases in which vertebrate and non-vertebrate are also involved, and there are other example also in which man and two intermediate hosts are involved. In case of infestation by a fish tapeworm, man, cyclops, fish, and then man. Paragonimus, in cases of Paragonimus, man, snail, crab, and then man. So we can classify on the basis of victim when the transmission of chain of transmission. Classification of vector-borne can be done by methods in which vectors are involved in the transmission. Can be mechanical transmission, can be biological transmission. So mechanical transmission means simple mechanical transfer is taking place without any development, without any multiplication of the organism in the vector. For example, flies transmitting cholera and typhoid is an example of mechanical transmission. Infectious agent is mechanically transported by crawling or flying arthropod with soiling of its feet or proboscis, or by passing of organism through its GI tract and passively excreted. Biological transmission means either the infectious agent is undergoing multiplication or development or both in the vector and requires an external incubation period before vector can transmit the disease. Extrinsic incubation period is the interval between entrance of infectious agent in the vector and vector becoming infective. It's very important, sometimes asked in Viva, what is extrinsic incubation period? It is the interval between entrance of infectious agent in the vector and vector becoming infective further for the host. Propagative type, the biological transmission can be propagative type. The infectious agent merely multiplies but no change in the form happens. For example, plague bacilli in the rat fleas is an example, a good example of propagative type of transmission. And in cyclopropagative, another is cyclopropagative. In this form, the agent changes its number and large multiplication takes place. For example, malaria in Anopheles mosquito, it is cyclopropagative, and there is development also. In this form, the agent changes its number and form also. For example, in malaria, the multiplication plus sexual development also takes place. So it's a good example of cyclopropagative type of vector-borne disease on the basis of the mechanism involved in transmission. The cyclodevelopment type. Cyclodevelopmental type, in this type the disease agent usually undergoes only development but no multiplication. Bougainvillea branchophyta microfilaria is a good example in which multiplication doesn't take place but the development, change in growth takes place. Can be transovarial transmission when the infectious agent transmitted vertically from female mosquito to its progeny. Example being Aedes aegypti and chikungunya fever. Or can be transstadial transmission, in which transmission of infectious agent from one stage of life cycle to next happens. So yellow fever and Aedes aegypti that changes from one stage to another in cases of yellow fever is an example of transstadial transmission. So these are various examples of the classification of vector-borne diseases on the basis of transmission chain. Mechanical, biological can be propagative, cyclopropagative, cyclodevelopmental, can be transoviral transmission, transstadial transmission. Now coming to the airborne transmission, very important, and particularly important in current context, the droplet nuclei. Droplets, they evaporate in the environment and dry in the form of droplet nuclei, and droplet nuclei may be formed from evaporation of the particles coughed and sneezed, where hundreds and thousands of droplets are excreted, and then gradually they dried up forms droplet nuclei. They can also be generated by microbial labs by a variety of atomizing devices, and these droplets remain suspended in air for a long time, sometimes losing, retaining infectivity. Either thing can happen. Either they can retain the infectivity. In case of, for example, TB, or droplet nuclei can be may remain infected and can be remain in the surfaces for more than 1 day or more than 2 days. So it forms an important chain of transmission. And particles between 1 to 5 micron usually is liable to easily drawn into alveoli and retain there. In cases of COVID-19, usually the size of the COVID-19 corona virus is 0.125 micron. So obviously it can easily drawn into alveoli. Anything less than 5 micron. Airborne transmission can also occur through smog and dust. Airborne spread of toxic air pollutants resulting in air pollution epidemics, and dust, large particles, they are expelled during coughing, sneezing, and they settle down by their sheer weight on the floor, carpets, furnitures, beddings, clothes, and they became part of dust, that is small particles of varying sizes are arising from the soil. And this dust contains variety of organisms, and during act of sweeping, bed making, they are released, and inhalation of this dust leads to the infection. Dust may also be released from floor by wind, for example being fungal spores. Other infections are pneumonia, psittacosis, TB, and dust may remain unsettled in the milk, uncovered food, and this type of infection can cause a nosocomial infection in case of if this is happening inside the hospital facility where the sources are great in number. Then through fomites, and this is very important in the current context. They are inanimate articles other than water and milk contaminated by infectious discharges from the patient, capable of harboring and transmitting infectious agent to healthy person. Example being clothes, towels, linens, handkerchiefs, cuffs. And in this COVID-19 pandemic also, fomites are greatly involved, and that's why there is recommendation of regular disinfection of various fomites. Various studies have also occurred, have been done on this subject, that how long the coronaviruses can reside, can remain viable in the fomites and other items. I think leather, in leather material, they usually can remain viable for very. Hello. Hello. हेलो, ये डिस्कनेक्ट बता रहा है। इधर आ जाइए। हाँ हाँ, इधर आ जाइए। I think there is some problem. I have to wait for 2-3 minutes. Hello. Can anybody hear me? Hello. Hello.
क्या कह रहा है सर?
Welcome and thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people around the world communicate for free. There are 24 participants in the conference. All participants are muted.
वो पता नहीं सर, बंद हो गया इससे सॉफ्टवेयर ऑटोमेटिक।
चालू करें। So, sorry for the interruption. So I was telling that how the fomites and inanimate objects, articles, they are very important in the transmission of the disease. Just a minute. Hello, lecture ले रहा हूँ। नहीं 12 से 11:30 बजे तो ऑब्स गैनी का हुआ है ना। जस्ट अ मिनट, एक मिनट। Sorry for the inconvenience. So the inanimate articles, they form aggregator, the indirect through which the transmission indirect transmission takes place, and that's why the regular disinfection of fomites and articles is advised. And I was sharing with you, there are various studies coming up which are studying that how they are studying that how much coronavirus COVID-19 can remain in inanimate articles, and as far as the some studies are concerned, it can remain viable for maximum time in leather material. So they are very important aspect in this airborne transmission. Other being unclean hands. Hands are the most common medium through which the infectious agent are transferred to food from skin, nose, and bowel, and transmission takes place directly from hand to mouth. Examples being staphylococcal infections, streptococcal infections, dysentery, and unclean hands indicate poor personal hygiene. Parenteral transmission is also a form of transmission, occurs by common use of syringes, needles among IV drug users. Then we come to the important terms and concepts related to the susceptible host. Host, a person or animal including birds or arthropods that affords substance or lodgement of an infectious agent under natural conditions is known as host. Host can be further divided into obligate host, means the only host, definitive host, host in which the parasite attains maturation or passes its sexual cycle. Then intermediate host, host in which parasite is in asexual or larval state. And the factors related to host and communicable diseases in the epidemiology of communicable diseases are age. We see when there are extremes of age, there are more chances of infection, either very less or more in age. They are very vulnerable for infection. Gender, sometimes it is seen. For some infections, males are more prone because of the mobility. Nutritional status, marital status, immunization status, obviously very important. Literacy, if you know the knowledge, attitude and practices with respect to particular disease, it forms an important factor related to host. Behavioral factors and immune status. Another aspect related to host is successful parasitism, and successful parasitism depends on the portal of entry, whether the infective agent will gain entry into the body and it will remain there for a period in which it can manifest various clinical features. So it depends on the portal of entry. For example, the respiratory group of infections, they are very easy to transfer, and they very easily gain entry. Site of election, portal of exit, survival capacity in external environment. The organisms which are very resistive in nature, this also forms an important aspect in the successful parasitism. Incubation period, another important element in related to host in infectious disease epidemiology is incubation period, and various aspects of incubation period. Incubation period is defined as the time interval between the invasion of infectious agent and appearance of first sign or symptom of the disease. Then comes median incubation period when there is an epidemic, for example current epidemic. The time required for 50% of the cases to occur following exposure is known as median incubation period. Median incubation period in case of this current epidemic COVID-19 is approximately 5.1 days. The factors determining the incubation period are important in transmission, generation time of a particular pathogen, infective dose, the portal of entry, the individual susceptibility, And infectious disease communicable during incubation. Infectious disease communicable during the incubation period. Examples being measles, chickenpox, whooping cough, this COVID-19. So various characteristics of incubation period includes length of incubation period is characteristic of a particular disease. Diseases which are having low incubation period, very within hours to days, they generally epidemic is very short lasting, and if there is a large incubation period is involved or intermediate incubation period is involved, the manifestation can be greater, larger. There is a minimum period below which there is no illness can occur, and varies from person to person for the same disease, can be different for different diseases. In some diseases, incubation period is very small, ranging from few hours to 2 to 3 days. For example, influenza can be medium and can be long. The examples of diseases in which the incubation period is medium, that is few days to few weeks, typhoid, chickenpox. And examples in which the incubation period is very long in months, hepatitis B, leprosy, and sometimes it is unpredictable. So, why to know about the incubation period? Because to know when we have sufficient knowledge of the incubation period, we can trace the source of infection. We can identify the period of surveillance or quarantine. For example, in this current COVID-19 pandemic, the period of quarantine is usually, it is said that it is 14 days. And why 14 days? But because it is the maximum range of incubation period. The immunization, state of immunization, identification of point source or propagated epidemic can be identified by knowing incubation period, having knowledge of incubation period. Prognosis, the incubation period, when they are very small or large, prognosis depends upon that. Another term is serial interval. What is serial interval? Serial interval is the gap in time between primary and secondary cases is known as serial interval. And by getting the series of information about primary and secondary cases, we can calculate the incubation period. Usually, serial interval, we can say approximately equal to incubation period, but not a general rule. It is the second term related with this is generation time, which is related to serial interval and which is related to incubation period. Generation time, it is the interval of time between recipient of infection by the host and maximum infectivity, that is generation time. Generation time is roughly equal to incubation period. Is roughly equal, not exactly. Maximum communicability may precede or follow the incubation period. Incubation period can be calculated only when the infection manifests with clinical features, because the definition of incubation period involves the signs and symptoms, and generation time refers to the transmission of infection, whether clinical or subclinical. So it is related with the microbial activity, not related with the clinical signs and symptoms, this term generation time. That's why in the definition it is written as the interval of time between recipient of infection by the host and maximum infectivity. So that's why generation time refers to the transmission of infection, whether clinical or subclinical. Totally related with the microbial activity. Communicable period. What is communicable period? Communicable period is defined as a time during an infectious agent may be transferred directly or indirectly from an infected person to another person, from an infected animal to man, or infected person to animals, including arthropods. Very important to control any epidemic, pandemic, is the knowledge of communicable period. Communicability varies among different diseases. Some diseases are more communicable during incubation period rather than acute illness, and vice versa can also happen. Communicability of some diseases can be reduced by early diagnosis and treatment. Another aspect related to it is secondary attack rate, very important. Secondary attack rate. Secondary attack rate is the number of exposed person developing the disease within the range of incubation period following exposure to the primary case. What is primary case? Primary case, which the case which firstly is comes to the investigator, which comes to the knowledge of investigator. So the number of exposed person developing the disease within the range of incubation period following exposure to the primary case or the first case in the case of an epidemic or series of cases. So the secondary attack rate is the number of exposed person developing the disease within the important term. The important aspect is in the tail of the this numerator, within the range of incubation period. Number of exposed person developing the disease within the range of incubation period upon the total number of exposed or susceptible contacts. This denominator will gradually excludes the person who are immune, who are immunized. So the denominator may be restricted to only susceptible contacts, and the primary case is excluded both from numerator and denominator. The important things to remember when you calculate secondary attack rate. So secondary attack rate is very important thing because in cases of epidemics, but it has its own limitations. It is limited to infections with primary case infected only for a short period of time, and if the primary case is infective for a long period of time, duration of exposure is an important factor in defining extent of spread. Another limitation is to identify susceptible. It is feasible only in diseases like measles, chickenpox, where history can be used as a basis of identification. But in majority of cases, the susceptible cannot be readily identified. So, advantages of measuring secondary attack rate or calculating secondary attack rate is vaccinees and non-vaccinees from several families can be added to determine the overall attack rates in the vaccinated and unvaccinated populations. As I was saying earlier, the vaccinees are not included in the denominator while we calculate secondary attack rate. And secondary attack rate were initially developed to measure the spread of infection within family, household, or any close aggregate of person who have had contact with case. And it is useful to determine disease of unknown etiology, whether it is communicable or not. For evaluation of control measures by measuring secondary attack rate, we can evaluate isolation, immunization, etc. Now, within the concept of disease prevention and control, important terms we will see. What are the aspects of early diagnosis and treatment? What are different aspects of notification, epidemiological investigation? This epidemiological investigation I will teach you in next class. The epidemiological investigation, all the steps, is very important. Investigation of epidemic. This is a long question usually comes, so important. A whole class is needed for this. Isolation, treatment, quarantine, interruption of transmission, susceptible host. These are the factors involved in disease prevention and control. So early diagnosis helps in the treatment of patients in epidemiological investigation. And when you identify or early diagnose a case, it helps to trace the source of infection from an index case to unknown or primary source of infection. To study the time, place, and person distribution. And for the prevention and control measures, obviously. So notification to the local health authority has to be taken up for providing medical care to the patients, and so as to limit the transmission of the disease. The serious diseases which cause serious menace to public health are included in the list of notifiable diseases, and notification can be done by the head of the family, including lay people, but the diagnosis is verified by the local health authority. As per the IHR, International Health Regulations, example of notifiable diseases: cholera, plague, typhoid fever, etc. And there are other diseases also which are under surveillance by WHO. As related to this COVID-19 pandemic, it was declared public health emergency and gradually a pandemic by WHO. So obviously under surveillance and obviously notifiable to the local district authority. Diseases which are examples of diseases which are surveillance by WHO are louse-borne typhus fever, relapsing fever, paralytic polio, malaria, influenza A, SARS. Now another aspect is controlling the reservoir. Controlling the reservoir it covers the identification of source and investigation of the epidemic. When you gradually investigate an epidemic, you are basically controlling the reservoir, and it covers the identification of source of infection and of the factors influencing its spread in the community, which include geographical situation, climate condition, various social, cultural and behavioral patterns, and character of reservoir, vectors and vehicles, and susceptible host populations. Isolation. Very important component in the disease prevention and control. Isolation. Isolation is the separation for the period of communicability of infected persons or animals from others in such places and under such conditions as to prevent or limit the direct or indirect transmission of the infectious agent from those infected to susceptible or who may spread the agent to others. So this is known as isolation. For example, isolation is happening in current COVID-19 cases, in current pandemic. If you see some examples for how long the separation is done, for chicken pox, the duration of isolation is until all lesions are crusted, which is usually 6 days after the onset of the rashes in cases of chicken pox. In cases of measles, from the onset of catarrhal stage to the 3rd stage of the rash. In cases of mumps, until parotid swelling subsides, the person is kept in isolation. In cases of hepatitis A, up to 3 weeks, the person is kept under isolation. So as for the separation for the period of communicability of infected person or can be animals from others in such places and under such conditions as to prevent to limit the direct or indirect. This includes both the direct and indirect transmission of the infectious agent from those infected to the susceptible. Treatment. If you early diagnosis and treatment, if you treat a case, obviously it reduces the period of communicability and it breaks the chain of transmission, cuts short the duration of illness and prevents the development of secondary cases. Quarantine. What is quarantine? You have heard this term many times. The limitation of freedom of movement. The limitation of freedom of movement of such well persons, such means who are looking apparently healthy, such well persons or domestic animals exposed to communicable disease for a period of time not larger than the longest usual incubation period of the disease in such manner as to prevent effective contact with those which are non-exposed. In case of this current COVID-19 pandemic, the period of quarantine is usually 14 days. That is usually it is the longest range, the maximum incubation period. For example, quarantine in current COVID-19, all travelers from red zone or previous containment zone is placed on quarantine for 14 days from the date of leaving that area if vaccination certificate, if the information is not available. Important component under disease prevention and control is interruption of transmission. It means breaking the chain of transmission. For example, in waterborne diseases like typhoid, dysentery, cholera, hepatitis A can be prevented by provision of safe drinking water supply. So we are breaking the chain of transmission. In cases of foodborne diseases, can be prevented by improving food sanitation, like clean practices like hand washing, adequate hand washing, adequate cooking from refrigeration of prepared foods, and withdrawal of the contaminated foods. Prevention of vector-borne diseases by adequate vector control measures. It helps in interruption in breaking the chain of transmission of the diseases. Now, other aspect is immunity, immunization, vaccination, which are related to the susceptible host. Susceptible host is protected by either through active immunity, through passive immunity, through combined active and passive immunity. We will see the examples which involves both this chemoprophylaxis and non-specific measures. So active immunization, universal immunization program, vaccination for all children as per immunization schedule is a perfect example of active immunization when there is a host is very susceptible to various vaccine preventable diseases. Passive immunization, anti-rabies, anti-tetanus serum are good examples of passive immunization for susceptible host. Combined immunization, for example, in rabies, anti-rabies serum and vaccine for class 3 dog bite cases are given, and in cases of tetanus, anti-tetanus serum and tetanus toxoid in the treatment of tetanus it is given. It's an example of combined immunization. Chemoprophylaxis. What is chemoprophylaxis? Chemoprophylaxis is administration of specific drugs for contacts for the prevention of the disease before the occurrence of the disease. For example, in this current COVID-19, hydroxychloroquine is suggested as a drug for chemoprophylaxis. So we are administrating of specific drugs for contacts for the prevention of the disease before the occurrence of the disease. In cases of malaria, cholera and diphtheria also, various drugs are given in chemoprophylaxis. In diphtheria, erythromycin and first dose of vaccine is given as chemoprophylaxis. In cholera, tetracycline is given as chemoprophylaxis. In case of malaria vivax, 300 mg of chloroquine based once a week can be given as chemoprophylaxis. In case of current COVID-19 pandemic, 400 mg of hydroxychloroquine BD on day 1 and subsequently 400 mg once weekly for 7 weeks. It is the suggested schedule for chemoprophylaxis. Non-specific measures which helps in infection control with related to infectious disease epidemiology, improvement in the quality of life, better housing, water supply, sanitation, nutrition, education. Obviously, these are non-specific measures, but they are very helpful and contributing factors for the disease prevention and control. So now quickly we will look into the chicken pox also, because we are dealing here with the important terms and concepts in infectious disease epidemiology, and simultaneously we are doing the respiratory infections. So quickly we will review the epidemiology of chicken pox. So chicken pox is a varicella. Chicken pox or varicella is an acute, highly infectious disease caused by varicella zoster VZ virus, and it is characterized by the vesicular rash that may be accompanied by fever and malaise. Malaise is generally the feeling of ill health and unhappiness which accompanies with disease, as malaise. The epidemiological determinants of chicken pox being the agent, host and environment. Agent, first we will look into agent. What is the causative agent of chicken pox? The causative agent of chicken pox is varicella zoster virus, also known as human alpha herpes virus. It's a DNA virus containing double standard DNA genome enveloped with nucleocapsid. It is an enveloped virus having lipid envelope, and there are spikes of glycoprotein. If you see the structure of the this virus, human alpha herpes virus. Source of the spelling of source is wrong, sorry. The source of infection is usually a case of chicken pox, and the virus occurs in the oropharyngeal secretions and lesions of the skin and mucosa. And the virus can be isolated from vesicular fluid during the first 3 days of the illness. The important feature related with this is these scabs are not infective. This question is usually asked in pre-PG or can be asked in Viva, whether the scabs of the chicken pox are infective or non-infective. They are not infective usually. The cycles, you know how vesicles look like. The period of infectivity is very important in chicken pox. It ranges from 1 to 2 days before the appearance of rash, 4 to 5 days after the thereafter. The virus tends to die out before the pustular stage. These are you can see the manifestation of chicken pox. The rashes are first seen on trunk. The patient ceases to be infectious once the lesions have crusted. Secondary attack rate is very important in case of chicken pox, because chicken pox is highly communicable disease. The secondary attack rate in household contacts approaches 90%. So secondary attack rate, as we have studied, number of persons developing disease within the range of incubation period upon the total number of susceptible individuals into 100. Now coming to the host factors, which is important epidemiological determinant. Age. Chickenpox primarily occurs among children. It's primarily a disease of childhood under 10 years of age, and disease can be severe in normal adults, because one attack gives durable immunity and secondary attacks are rare. In pregnancy, infection during pregnancy presents a risk for fetus and the neonate. Fetal malformation can result. That's why vaccination has to be given if we are suspecting chickenpox in a pregnant lady. Environmental factors. Chickenpox shows seasonal trend in India. The disease mostly occurs during the first 6 months of the year, during winter months and spring, and overcrowding favors its transmission. Chickenpox is transmitted from person to person by droplet infections and by droplet nuclei, and most persons are infected by face-to-face contact. The portal of entry of the virus is respiratory tract. The incubation period of chickenpox is 14 to 16 days. We have seen the various features of incubation period, why it is important, and when it is come to 14 to 16 days, that means it comes into the medium range or incubation period. Clinical features of chickenpox. First, there is macular rash after usually 24 to 48 hours following slight fever, malaise and anorexia. The lesions appear in crops, first on trunk and scalp. First usually is normally it is thin. It is first appears in trunk and scalp, then moving sparsely to the extremities, and may appear in the mucous membrane. Generally, 3 successive eruptions over 3 to 4 days takes place, and lesion begins as a macular rash, develop into a red papular rash, then move quickly into teardrop vesicles with erythematous base. Then vesicle becomes pustular and begins drying, and a crust usually develops. Rash varies from child to child, and the clinical spectrum of chickenpox may vary from child to child. The clinical course of chickenpox may be divided into 2 stages: pre-eruptive and then eruptive. Pre-eruptive stage, onset is sudden. There is always very high fever. Usually onset is sudden with a high fever. Fever can be mild or moderate, but moderate to high fever is more common. Pain in back, shivering and malaise. And this stage is brief, lasting about 24 hours. In adults, the prodromal illness is usually more severe and may last for 2 to 3 days before the rash appears. In the eruptive stage, the rash is often the first sign. The rashes are often pruritic, itching takes place, and it comes to on the day the fever starts. Usually the day on which the fever starts and the appearance of rash, it usually is seen as coincides. The distinctive features of rash are which we can discuss with respect to the distribution, rapid evolution, pleomorphism, and respect to the fever. The rash are symmetrical in nature. It first appears on the trunk, where it is abundant, and then comes to the face, arms, legs, where it is less abundant. Axilla may be affected, but palms and soles does not usually affected. The density of the eruption diminishes centrifugally, and further then there is rapid evolution of the rashes. The rashes advances quickly through the stages of macule, papule, vesicle and scab. You know all these terms: macule, papule, vesicle and scab. And the vesicle looks like dewdrops on the skin. Scabbing usually begins 4 to 7 days after the rash appears. Pleomorphism, a characteristic feature of rash in chickenpox is its pleomorphism. That is, all the stages of the rash may be seen simultaneously at one time in the same area. Fever does not run high but shows exacerbation with each fresh crop of eruption. Complications: in most cases, chickenpox is self-limiting. However, it may be accompanied by severe complications in immunocompromised individuals. These includes hemorrhage, pneumonia, encephalitis, secondary bacterial infections, and disseminated intravascular coagulation (DIC). Diagnosis of chickenpox includes examination of the vesicular fluid. Direct scrapings of floor of vesicles shows multinucleated giant cells colored by Giemsa stain. Treatment usually involves acyclovir, valacyclovir, famiclovir, foscarnet. Treatment includes mainly antivirals, antihistaminics, antipyretics. Usually long-acting antipyretics should be used. These days they are available. Commonly used drug is acyclovir, available as various under various brand names in the market. Famiclovir, foscarnet, can be taken orally, can be through IV, and if they are usually prescribed to people having long-term illness or which are having low immunity or very much prone, uh, the treatment is started immediately in them, and mainly other symptomatic relief is given. Control involves the usual measures are notification to the local health authorities, isolation of the case for about 6 to 7 days after onset of the rash, and disinfection of the article soiled by the nose and throat discharges. These are the control measures. Prevention is by a varicella zoster immunoglobulin, which is given within 72 hours of exposure to the susceptible host. Varicella zoster immunoglobulin is usually a live attenuated varicella virus vaccine. Is for children between 12 to 18 months which do not had chicken pox, because it is a self-limited disease once happens and gives immunity. Sometimes this question is also asked that what is the differentiating features with respect to rash and pattern of smallpox and chicken pox. So just have a quick look. Fever in cases of smallpox is usually 2 to 4 days before the rash, and in chicken pox the fever usually accompanies the rash. And the rash appearance in case of chicken pox, they are having pleomorphism in several stages, but in smallpox it is same stage. The rash development in smallpox is usually slow. Now eradicated disease, but still you may never know what happens in future. That's why this question, this feature of differentiation of rash and fever and various other manifestation between smallpox and chickenpox is important. So with development related to the development of rash in smallpox, development is slow in smallpox, and the development of rash in chickenpox is rapid. Distribution more are on arms and legs, and in chickenpox they are more on the trunk. On palms and soles the rashes are usually present, and in chickenpox it is usually absent. And the mortality, the case fatality rate or death in case of smallpox is usually more than 10%, and in chickenpox it is very less, very uncommon. So you can see the distribution of the rashes in smallpox and chickenpox, more on the extremities, palms and soles. This is more on the trunk. So we will continue with epidemiology and respiratory infections combined. In the next class I will deal with the investigation of the epidemic, and gradually we will move forward. Okay, thank you.